Welcome to episode 152. And today I'd like to discuss HR support services, what they actually are, why they matter, and why having the right support around your people can make such a big difference to your business. If you're a business owner or a leader, you probably already know how much headspace the people side of your business can take up. And if you're looking to grow the business, looking after clients, leading your team, somewhere in the middle of all of that, there's hiring, performance issues, policies, compliance, awkward conversations, workplace tensions, and all the things that can just sit under the surface, things that we often refer to as people stuff. But the truth is that people stuff is not ever just stuff. It affects performance, culture, risk, and the amount of time and energy that you have left to actually focus on growing the business. So, in this episode, I'm going to unpack what HR support services really include, when businesses usually realize they need help, and what difference the right HR partner can make. So, starting with the basics, what are HR support services? They are practical and strategic support that a business gets to manage its people and culture well. And that can include day-to-day advice on employee issues, support with compliance, help with contracts and policies, performance management, recruitment support, leadership guidance, and broader advice about how to build a stronger team and a healthier workplace. So simply, it's just having someone in your corner who understands the people and culture side of running a business and can help you make good decisions before small issues become much bigger ones. And this matters because a lot of people still hear HR and immediately think of policies, paperwork, red tape, but HR should not feel heavy or overly corporate. It should create clarity, make leadership easier, reduce risk, and help you build a business where people know what's expected and they feel supported to do good work. So that's when HR becomes genuinely valuable. It is not just an admin function sitting quietly in the background. It becomes something that strengthens your business. So, what does HR support actually include? And there are a few core areas. The first is compliance. So, this is the piece that can be ignored in a business until there's a problem. It could be that contracts are outdated, policies haven't kept up, there's uncertainty around the modern award system in Australia, questions about leave, flexibility, performance management, or what is not okay from a Fair Work perspective is sometimes not really understood. So, a lot of business owners and leaders are doing their best, but they're relying on old templates, advice they heard years ago, Google searches, and all of that is where the risk starts to creep in. So, having proper HR support means you have guidance on the fundamentals, things like contracts, policies, documentation, processes, and compliance reviews. And those things are not the most exciting part of running a business. They're certainly not the most exciting part of HR either, but they are the foundations that help you operate with more confidence and a lot less guesswork. The second area is employee relations, and this is more the human side of things. So, performance concerns, interpersonal conflict, tension between a manager and a team member, questions around behaviour, accountability, communication, or expectations. And when it comes to people, we're not widgets. There's no operating manual. So issues are very rarely clean. They're very rarely black and white. More often, there's somewhere in that grey area. The leader is not quite sure how to approach the conversation, what to document, or what order things need to happen in. And this is where support can become really valuable because when leaders avoid these issues, they do not disappear. They usually become much bigger, much harder, and much more emotionally charged over time. The third area is performance management, and this is one of the biggest areas because many businesses will wait until performance is clearly poor before they act. But strong performance management is not just about underperformance, it's about clarity. It's about making sure that people know what good looks like and helping managers give feedback early, consistently, and confidently. And when that's done well, it doesn't just improve performance, it will improve your culture as well because people feel safer, expectations are clearer, and managers feel less strained because they're not storing up issues until everything feels really awkward and heavy. And then there's recruitment support. So many growing businesses feel this pain point because they're hiring on the run. Job ads are rushed, interviews are inconsistent, managers are hiring based on gut feel, and the wrong person comes in the door, the onboarding is messy, and the business just pays for it later. So, good HR support can help with that too. It's not just about filling a role, it's thinking clearly about what capability you actually need, how you're going to attract the right people, how to assess them properly, and how to set them up well once they join. And finally, there's strategic HR advice, which is a piece that can get missed when people only think about HR as being reactive support. Strategic HR is about stepping back and asking, where is the business going? What do we need from our people, our leaders, our structure, our culture, and how are we going to get there? And that could mean some workforce planning, some leadership development. It might mean creating a clearer people plan or strengthening your foundations before your growth starts to create chaos. And this is where HR can shift from fixing problems to helping to create momentum. Now, I think the businesses need HR support now more than ever. It's not just a nice to have. The business environment has become so complex. Employment obligations keep changing. Leaders are navigating with more nuance. Employee expectations have shifted. Hybrid and flexible work have introduced a whole new set of challenges. On top of that, many managers have been promoted because they're excellent technically, not because they know how to lead well. So often what happens is the business grows, the team grows, complexity grows, but the people practices don't grow with it. And this is where the cracks start to show. Hiring feels rushed. Managers become inconsistent. Tough conversations are avoided. Employees are confused. Culture's patchy. And the owner or the CEO is spending more and more time dealing with people issues instead of actually leading the business. And that's often the moment when someone says, oh, we just need some help. And, external HR support is not a sign that something's wrong with your business. Very often it's a sign that your business is growing and recognizing that people and culture needs proper attention if that growth is going to be sustainable. When should a company consider outsourced HR support? Well, there are a few clear moments when this starts to make sense. One is rapid growth. If you're hiring quickly, taking on more complexity, your systems and leadership capability can get stretched really fast. What works well with 5 people doesn't work in the same way when you have 15 or 30. Another is when workplace conflict or people issues keep popping up. If you're spending too much time dealing with misunderstandings, poor performance, communication issues, or manager challenges, it usually means the business needs more structure and better support around its people practices. Another trigger is compliance concern. Sometimes the leader simply has that niggling feeling that their contracts, policies, or processes aren't as solid as they should be. They're not completely sure if they're covered, and they're hoping things are probably okay. And that uncertainty alone is worth addressing. And then there's a very common issue of not having internal HR expertise. Not every business needs a full-time HR person, and for many small and medium businesses, it's not the right solution. But they do need access to HR expertise. They still need someone to ask, someone to sense check things with, someone who can help with both the thinking and the doing. And that's why HR being outsourced can be such a good fit. It gives businesses access to experienced support in a way that is flexible and commercially sensible, which leads to, what does an HR consultant actually do? Sometimes they get asked this, and I think it's a great question because it can mean different things depending on the business. At a practical level, a HR consultant helps you handle the people side of running your business. They give advice when issues come up, help create or improve contracts, policies, processes, support, recruitment, onboarding, performance management, employee relations, coaching leaders, guiding compliance decisions, and ideally will help you think ahead rather than just react. A good HR consultant is there to help to get through that complexity, to make things simpler, to bring calm when things are getting a bit heated, to help you make decisions with more confidence. And the best ones don't just hand you advice and disappear. They get to know your business, your goals, your risk, your culture, because all of that context matters. Good support should never be one size fits all. So is outsourced HR suitable for small businesses? Yes, absolutely. I think it's one of the most sensible options for small businesses because you need that expert support, but not the full-time internal HR role. So just that help with contracts, policies, hiring, performance conversations, etc. So just having access to someone experienced, but in a way that's flexible, makes commercial sense. And that's where outsourced HR works really well. And when the support model is designed well, it can grow with you. You might start with more on-demand help, and as the business gets more complex, move into a more strategic model like fractional HR. And that flexibility is one of the reasons why outsourced HR works so well for growing businesses. And the cost is really going to depend on the type of support and the depth of the partnership, depending on whether you want occasional advice and compliance support or whether you want more of that strategic support with leadership input. But what matters is not just the monthly cost, it's the cost of not having that support. Poor hires are super expensive. Performance issues, fair work claims, compliance mistakes, leaders spending hours dealing with preventable people problems is all expensive. So it's thinking about what kind of support will help us reduce risk, save time, improve our leadership, and strengthen our team. Because when your HR support is done well, it's not your cost, it's an enabler. So, part of that work is also that fair work compliance, because that's one of the biggest reasons that people seek external help. You want to know your contracts are right, your policies are current, your award coverage is being considered. And we want to make sure our processes are fair. No business owner wants to lie awake at night wondering whether there's something they've done is going to land them in front of a fair work commissioner. So, it's about trying to take that stress away so we don't end up in those reactive positions. And that's where that compliance work can become really helpful. But the real benefits of having the right partner is where, you don't just get that practical support, that compliance support, but you also just get someone that helps you feel less alone as a leader, will save you time, improve consistency, lift confidence in decision making, help your managers lead better, improve your employee experience. When people know what's expected, when managers communicate well, when processes are fair, when culture is intentional, the work feels better. And then we're less likely to lose great people and we're more likely to bring great people into the business. People don't stay with you because your paperwork's in order. They stay because they're well led, expectations are clear, problems are addressed fairly, and the culture is healthy. So it's thinking about how do we go beyond just that compliance work. And if you're listening to this and thinking, yep, that sounds familiar, maybe we've outgrown the way we're just currently managing HR, then just don't wait for a major issue before you get support. The best time to strengthen your HR foundations is before it feels urgent, before the people problems escalate, before the growth starts to create chaos, before your leaders become stretched. So HR support services are not just about solving problems. They're about creating the kinds of businesses where people can do their best work and leaders can focus on what matters most. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode. If this conversation has made you reflect on how supported your business really is on the people side, that's probably a useful place to start. And if you know another business owner or leader who's carrying a lot of this on their own, then send this episode their way. You can also show us the love by leaving a rating or a review over Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thanks so much for joining me. If you have any feedback, questions, or ideas for future episodes, head on over to amplifyhr.com.au or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can start a conversation.